The Simpsons has been around since the tail end of the 80s, and plenty of the show's current viewers were born after it premiered. If you're one of those fans, stick around to learn the most popular episode from the year you were born. The most popular episode of The Simpsons to air in 1989 was also the only one to air that year. Of course, we're talking about Simpsons Roasting on an Open Fire, the very first full-length episode of what's now the longest-running show in primetime history. It's a classic Simpsons tale about Homer trying to make his family happy, and it's packed with relatable moments, hilarious disappointments, and cutting humor. Early in the story, the Simpsons' Christmas celebration is put in serious jeopardy when power plant owner Mr. Burns chooses fat executive raises over holiday bonuses for employees. Homer doesn't tell Marge the bad news, believing that he can dip into a big jar of money that she has stashed in her hair. Unfortunately, Marge ends up using this emergency fund on laser skin surgery for Bart after he gets a tattoo when her back is turned. Forced to take on a second job for the holidays, Homer becomes a lackluster mall Santa. He only ends up earning $13 and decides to bet it all at the dog track, where he promptly loses everything. But fear not, the first Simpsons episode has a happy ending. After the race, the losing dog that Homer bet on jumps into his arms, and Bart asks if they can keep him.
But he's a loser! He's pathetic! He's a Simpson.
The Simpsons was just about the hottest thing on television in 1990, and Bart quickly became the breakout star. So it's not surprising that he served as the centerpiece of the show's second season premiere, Bart Gets an F, which was also the most popular episode of the year. Appropriately enough, this installment forces Bart to reckon with his immature decisions and bad boy ways. After faking his way through a book report on Treasure Island, which he didn't bother to read, and cheating off of Milhouse on a test, the school psychiatrist tells Homer and Marge that it would be best for Bart to repeat the 4th grade. Dead set against it, Bart actually tries to improve his marks and gets his classmate Martin to tutor him in exchange for popularity lessons. After forcing him to study, Bart defies everyone's expectations and does well enough on a history test to pass, with the bare minimum score of D-. Still, it's enough to earn his test a coveted place on the fridge right next to one of Lisa's many A's. Viewers can pick up clues from early episodes of The Simpsons that Homer and Marge are in their late 30s and they met at Springfield High School. The 1991 flashback episode, The Way We Was, goes into much more detail by depicting the story of Homer and Marge's first days as a couple. The idea of a Simpsons storyline set in the 70s, featuring a young Homer and Marge, was irresistible to viewers, and The Way We Was ended up the most watched episode of 1991. Back in 1974, high school senior Homer lands in detention yet again for smoking in the boys' room. Studious Marge winds up there for the first time for burning a bra at a feminist rally. When she walks into detention, it's love at first sight for Homer, and he immediately wants to ask her to the prom. To get close to Marge, he hires her as his French tutor, despite not actually taking that class. After an undeniable chemistry develops between them and she accepts his prom invite, he lets it slip that he lied about French class. Feeling betrayed, Marge goes to the prom with handsy nerd Artie Ziff instead, standing up a heartbroken Homer. At the end of an awful night for both of them, Marge picks up Homer off the side of the road and they share their first fate-sealing kiss.
I'm gonna hug you and kiss you, and then I'll never be able to let you go. And I never have.
While Lisa's first word prominently features Lisa as a baby, the real reason this is the most viewed episode of 1992 is that it was a huge milestone in the life of Maggie. In the run-up to this episode's airing, Fox heavily hyped the fact that Hollywood legend and Academy Award winner Elizabeth Taylor would guest star as the voice of the youngest Simpson. Towards the beginning of the story, the Simpsons move into their home on Evergreen Terrace, but that's just the first of many changes in store for the family. Bart is also forced to contend with a creepy clown bed that Homer made, as he needs to give up his crib for the newly born Lisa. She gets so much of his parents' attention that Bart starts acting out and threatens to run away. But he's stopped in his tracks when Lisa says her first word.
Bart! What did you say? Bart? Supper and succotash! You can talk!
At the end of the episode, the action returns to the present, where Homer puts Maggie to bed, telling her he's in no rush for her to speak because he doesn't want her to talk back. After he leaves the room, Maggie delivers the moment everyone was waiting for.
Daddy?
It's no secret that Homer is a man of simple pleasures, especially when it comes to alcohol. But in Duffless, the most popular episode of 1993, Homer pays the price for his endless love of beer. As the story begins, Homer sneaks out of work to take the Duff Brewery tour with Barney. Naturally, they both have a few samples, rendering Barney physically unable to drive. Homer, who didn't indulge as much as Barney, gets behind the wheel and is immediately busted by Chief Wiggum. Charged with drunk driving, Homer is stripped of his license and forced to attend Alcoholics Anonymous meetings.
Homer, with our help, you'll never touch a beer again.
Marge, worried about Homer's addictive behaviors, thinks that giving up beer for a month might be a good idea for him. He reluctantly agrees, and although it's extremely difficult, he eventually succeeds. In the process, he saves $100 and loses so much weight that he no longer sweats while eating. At the end of the month, Homer even resists his urge to down a few beers at the bar and goes on a romantic bike ride with Marge. Let's just hope he didn't end up taking her to Moe's. The Simpsons' annual Halloween specials are a TV tradition that still endures to this day. In 1994, the phenomenon reached critical mass as Treehouse of Horror V ranked as the most viewed episode of the year. The episode starts with a parody of the horror classic The Shining, in which Mr. Burns hires the Simpsons to be the winter caretakers of his remote mountain lodge, but he makes sure to get rid of all the beer and TV sets, sending Homer into a murderous rage. Then, in time and punishment, Homer tries to fix the family's toaster and accidentally turns it into a time travel device. After going back way too far and squishing a prehistoric insect, Homer zaps his way through various bizarre timelines created by his actions, including a Ned Flanders-ruled dystopia. The episode finishes out with Nightmare Cafeteria, in which Principal Skinner helps lunch lady Doris figure out new ways to serve the kids on a budget.
Are you saying you killed Jimbo, processed his carcass, and served him for lunch?
While the owner of Springfield's nuclear power plant, Mr. Burns, is famously cruel, the 1995 episode Who Shot Mr. Burns Part 1 demonstrates just how the wicked tycoon is willing to sink. After oil is discovered under Springfield Elementary School, bringing much-needed funds to the poorly resourced institution, Burns steals the lucrative crude with his slant drilling company. Not only does he destroy large parts of the town in the process, including the Springfield Retirement Castle and Moe's Tavern, but he creates a monopoly on energy, forcing everyone in the region to get their power from Burns' sources. By the end of the episode, Burns has been shot by an unknown assailant and is barely clinging to life while sprawling out on a sundial. Of course, this is only part one of The Simpsons' most famous cliffhanger, which left the world wondering who shot Mr. Burns.
Well, I couldn't possibly solve this mystery. Can you?
Yeah, I'll give it a shot.
2 years after earning some of its biggest Halloween ratings ever, another Simpsons Fright Fest, Treehouse of Horror VII, scared up enough viewers to rank as the top episode of 1996. Some of the interest in this episode might have been influenced by that year's presidential race, which was between Bill Clinton and Bob Dole. The Simpsons was always a satirical show, and it makes fun of both candidates in this Halloween special by having recurring alien invaders, Kang and Kodos, abduct the two men, transform into their likeness, and run for president in their place. As the aliens point out, the United States has a two-party system, so Americans have to vote for one of them, and then wind up enslaved. In the second of the anthology episode segments, Lisa's tooth in a petri dish experiment leads to a rapidly evolving society where she is worshipped. In the final story, the family confronts Bart's monstrous twin brother, Hugo, who's been kept chained up in the Simpsons' attic. Fox was responsible for more than a few hits that dominated pop culture in the 1990s, but only one dared crossover with The Simpsons, The X-Files. Bringing FBI agents Fox Mulder and Dana Scully to The Simpsons was a publicity stunt at its core, and it worked like a charm. The Springfield Files was the most popular episode of 1997. One night, a very drunk Homer walks home from Moe's Tavern and stumbles into the woods, where he comes face to face with something completely unexplainable, a wispy, glowing, big-eyed creature resembling popular depictions of aliens. News of the encounter reaches Mulder and Scully, and they journey to Springfield to investigate the mysterious sighting.
I bring you love.
It's bringing love. Don't let it get away.
Break its legs!
It's not the X-Files duo that cracks the case, but Lisa. She forces Smithers to come forward and explain that the presumed alien is actually the elderly and decrepit Mr. Burns. It turns out that his weekly life-preserving medical treatments leave him so disoriented that he wanders around the woods. The glow is simply a side effect from working around nuclear power for so long. In Bart Carny, the best-performing episode of 1998, the Simpsons encounter the sketchy world of traveling carnivals. When the carnival comes to Springfield and the family decides to check it out, Bart gets himself into trouble almost immediately. He hijacks a car that the carnival claims once belonged to Adolf Hitler and then smashes it into a tree. To pay for the damages, Bart and Homer become carnies themselves. Under the tutelage of father-son duo Cooter and Spud, the Simpson guys learn all about fixing games and bribing police, but Homer fails to properly pay off Chief Wiggum, getting Cooter and Spud's game/home shut down. Taking pity on them, Homer invites them to stay with the family, but he quickly comes to regret it. Before long, they temporarily assume ownership of the house and refuse to let the Simpsons back in.
You can't do this to me! What about the Carny Code?
In Maximum Homerdrive, the most watched episode of 1999, Homer is intrigued by a promotional stunt at a steakhouse. Whoever can eat a 16-pound steak with all the trimmings gets it for free. He then accepts a challenge from a long-haul truck driver named Red Barkley, who bets Homer that he can finish the huge meal first. Red is indeed the victor, but in the process, he dies of what Dr. Hibbert diagnoses as beef poisoning. Homer, taking all the wrong lessons from this experience, decides there's only one thing to do: complete Red's last delivery with Bart by his side. Of course, he does this without knowing how to drive a big rig or understanding the culture of the road.
I want you to blow your horn.
Oh! That little punk!
It's a little surprising that it took until The Simpsons' 12th season for Bart to become a professional con artist. Fans are apparently eager to experience this foregone conclusion firsthand, as The Great Money Caper was the top episode of 2000. At the beginning of the story, a sturgeon falls from a space station and crashes into the Simpsons' car. After that unexpected event, Bart and Homer decide to busk as a magic act so they can earn enough money to fix the family car. The scheme doesn't go according to plan, and the duo only earns 60 cents. So Homer loses his patience with Bart and drives away without him. When passers-by take pity on the boy, he starts raking in the cash without having to do anything. After Bart takes a taxi home and buys himself a steak dinner, both Simpson guys realize that they could just grift people to earn money. No busking skills required. Naturally, it all goes bad, and Homer and Bart get caught by an FBI agent. But even that is a ruse. The agent is an actor hired by Marge to teach Homer and Bart a lesson. The 2001 episode Homer, spelled HOMR, attempts to explain why the Simpsons patriarch has such a unique personality, to put it kindly. Fans are so eager to learn how he got to be so Homer-like that they made it the most watched episode of the year. After Homer gets a job as a medical test subject, doctors find a crayon lodged in his brain. It turns out that when Homer was a child, he shoved 16 of them up his nose, and while he thought that he had sneezed them all out, the blue one got stuck in there for decades. After Homer has it surgically removed, his unencumbered brain finally works correctly. Homer suddenly becomes intelligent, cultured, and able to relate to his brilliant daughter for the first time. But after a few ups and downs, Homer realizes that he was much happier when he was less intelligent. Luckily for him, Moe is more than willing to hammer the crayon back into his brain and restore his previous level of intelligence.
Extended warranty? How can I lose?
Perfect.
Large Marge from 2002 is absolutely packed with silly sight gags, which helped it become the most popular episode of the year. When Lisa wins a bet with Homer and gets to choose their daddy-daughter day activity, she has them build houses for domiciles for the destitute. They work alongside ex-presidents Bill Clinton, George Bush, and Jimmy Carter, who engage in Three Stooges-esque physical comedy and violent slapstick. Later at the worksite, Homer demonstrates to a couple women how Marge birthed Bart, only for her to drive by and think that he's flirtatiously flexing his muscles for them. Not that he has many muscles to flex. Worried that Homer is losing his passion for her, Marge decides to get liposuction. Unfortunately, the surgeons mix up their patients and provide the episode with its central plotline and most obvious sight gag.
What on earth have you done? My McGuppies became bazongas.
In 2003, as I'm spelling as fast as I can, two big events simultaneously passed through the greater Springfield area, a championship spelling competition and a mania for Krusty Burger's Ribwich. Of course, Homer gets addicted to the Ribwich, a sandwich whose meat sauce is couched in secrecy. He joins a group of ribheads who travel around to different Krusty Burger locations according to the sandwich's rolled-out release schedule. Homer's new adventure in gluttony comes to an abrupt end when Krusty announces that the Ribwich will be discontinued, as the animal from which it's derived has suddenly gone extinct. Meanwhile, Lisa quickly rises through the ranks of competitive spelling. In a surprise twist, writer George Plimpton asked Lisa to throw the finals to a more popular and marketable competitor named Alex. If she goes along with the plan, she'll receive a full college scholarship and a George Plimpton hot plate. Lisa, of course, sticks to her high morals and announces during the competition that she was asked to throw the contest. She continues to compete, but she misspells the word intransigent and knocks herself out of the finals. Still, the family is incredibly proud of Lisa and her second-place finish.
You're the number one speller in this car, or in that car, or in that car, or don't look at that car.
Building fighting robots is an ongoing pastime for thousands of people, but in the early 2000s, the pursuit enjoyed a mainstream moment with shows like BattleBots. The Simpsons tapped into this fad in 2004, and it paid off. The robot-themed story, I Annoyed Grunt, Dole, Bart, was the most popular episode of the year. After Homer does a terrible job of assembling Bart's new bicycle, he decides to make it up to him by constructing a BattleBot to compete on the TV show, Robot Rumble. Homer's not the most talented engineer, however, so he resorts to crafting a glorified robot costume. He steps inside, then goes on television and suffers a series of violent beatdowns until Bart finally discovers what his dad has been up to. But this doesn't stop Homer, who continues to fight until the truth finally pops out.
That robot has given birth to a man!
Fox had the rights to the Super Bowl in 2005, and they gave The Simpsons the honor of airing a special episode right after the big game. That installment, Homer and Ned's Hail Mary pass, leaned into the sports theme in a big way with guests galore. When a video of Homer doing a victory dance after winning a carnival game goes viral, several prominent athletes hire him to choreograph their own celebratory dances. LeBron James, Yao Ming, Michelle Kwan, Warren Sapp, and Tom Brady all put in requests, and are all voiced by their real-world selves. Homer's dances grow into such a cultural phenomenon that he scores a Super Bowl halftime show. He recruits Ned Flanders to help him out, seeing as how his pious neighbor has been making a name for himself by producing violent biblical films. For the big halftime show, Homer and Ned recreate the story of Noah's Ark for millions of football-loving fans, but the reaction of the viewing public is pretty predictable.
All over America today, viewers were outraged by the Super Bowl halftime show's blatant display of religion and decency.
Mid-2006 marked a particular cultural confluence that was directly reflected in the highest-rated Simpsons episode of that year. While mob media was enjoying its time in the sun, Metallica was also going through a period of heightened cultural ubiquity after a lengthy tour in support of their 2003 album, Saint Anger. It was within that Venn diagram of pop culture phenomena that The Simpsons opened its 18th season. The Mook, the chef, the wife, and her Homer combines references to The Godfather and The Sopranos with a cameo by Metallica.
Hey, loser! We got a ride from a real fan!
I used to sleep with Lars's grandmother.
It's a mob movie parody depicting the friendship between Lisa and Michael D'Amico, the conflicted son of Fat Tony who dreams of becoming a chef instead of following the family business. Meanwhile, Homer and Bart get a taste of the mob life for themselves. It ultimately went down as the most viewed Simpsons episode in all of 2006, as well as the most viewed of season 18, the last season premiere of the show to earn that distinction so far. If you subscribe to the argument that it's essentially an episode of the show ballooned to feature length, it could be argued that The Simpsons movie was the most popular episode of The Simpsons in 2007. It did, after all, gross over $500 million worldwide. Treehouse of Horror 18 became the most viewed true episode of The Simpsons in 2007, but it was the first Treehouse of Horror episode since 9 not to directly parody any horror or thriller works. Instead, E.T. Go Home sends up E.T. the Extraterrestrial with a story about Bart naively befriending Kodos, and Mr. and Mrs. Simpson blows up the ever-present tensions between Homer and Marge. into a hyper-violent Mr. and Mrs. Smith spoof. Finally, Heckhouse invents an all-new story about Ned Flanders trying to scare the Springfield kids into compliance with Christian morals.
I warned ya, and yet my punishment is no less severe. That's odd.
2008 followed the same pattern as 2007, and the Treehouse of Horror was once again the year's most popular Simpsons episode. Treehouse of Horror 19, released as the fourth episode of Season 20, climbed even higher than 18 and attained the best ratings for a Halloween installment since 2003. Continuing the previous year's departure from the scary flick satire template, Treehouse of Horror 19 inserts horror and gore into parodies of non-horror works. Segment 1, entitled Robot Parody, sees the entire town of Springfield get taken over by a robot war as cars and then various inanimate objects turn into Transformers. How to get ahead in advertising begins with Homer accidentally shoving Krusty into a wood chipper, prompting a group of ruthless ad men to hire him as an assassin of celebrities who refuse to cede their likenesses. Lastly, it's the Grand Pumpkin Millhouse takes aim at the iconic but not so scary 1966 Peanuts Halloween special, with Millhouse taking over from Linus as a resident believer in the Halloween spirit. Unfortunately for Springfield, the Grand Pumpkin gets angry when it learns just how many of its brethren are cooked and cut apart for the occasion.
No! Ladies?
Bart Gets a Z, as you guys say it over there, but it should be said! Anyway, that one features one of the show's most notable Edna Krabappel-centered storylines in the post-Season 9 era. In a sign of how quickly every part of The Simpsons was being transformed by 21st century technology, the plot begins with Edna deciding to take away the students' cell phones in hopes of getting them to pay attention to class. Her plan backfires when the students band together to calm her down by spiking her coffee with liquor. Following a series of drunken embarrassments, Edna is fired and replaced with a tech-friendly substitute teacher, Zachary Vaughn. The new teacher appears to be fun and likable at first, but appearances turn out to be deceiving, as he ends up revealing his true colors when he gets drunk on the job himself.
I hate children! I hate children! You and you and you and you and you!
Chronicling the turbulent return of the Krusty the Clown show and its host's whirlwind love affair with appearances from Anne Hathaway and Eartha Kitt. Once Upon a Time in Springfield was marketed as episode 450 of The Simpsons, a massive 20th anniversary event. It was even scheduled alongside a 1-hour celebratory documentary on the show's history. The awesomely named The Simpsons 20th Anniversary in 3D on Ice featured interviews with fans and some interesting real-world tie-ins, like a guy who actually grew a tomato. Once Upon a Time in Springfield received an Emmy nomination, and Anne Hathaway was also nominated for Outstanding Voiceover Performance. Moms I'd Like to Forget was the premiere episode of Season 22's Back Half on January 9th. That title doesn't look like anything special until you realize what the first letters spell out. Get it? Oh, Simpsons, you cheeky little monkey. You still have your fastball. Marge reconnects with a group of cool friends she made during Bart's preschool days, while Bart himself falls in with their troublemaking kids. Eventually, the kids' antics become so dangerous and annoying that even he has second thoughts. So he tries to break up the group by causing a massive explosion. Of course, it doesn't go according to plan.
Today I'm finally getting this garage organized. Guess I'll put these tools away. Hang them on hooks and such.
Arriving just over a year after the massively successful award season and box office bow of The Social Network, the Social Network parodies the David Fincher film about the creation of Facebook, with a story about Lisa inventing a social network of her own. The episode borrows the movie's courtroom framing and time-jumping structure, chronicling the course of events that have since landed Lisa on trial. We jump back several months and watch Lisa have an epiphany in which she realizes she has no real friends, after which she decides to start a social networking website called Springface. The site becomes a huge hit in Springfield, and Lisa amasses a veritable ocean of friends, but they'll only talk to her online. Sure enough, Springface addiction begins to unravel the fabric of Springfield society.
Somebody call 911!
I don't know how to use the phone on my phone.
Springface is shut down for good, and Lisa learns a valuable lesson that you should probably go outside and spend time with your real friends once in a while. The twist of Homer Goes to Prep School is that the title has a hidden meaning. It's not so much that Homer actually goes to prep school, but that he learns how to be a prepper. That is, a paranoid survivalist getting ready for the end of the world. The subject of preppers was highly topical in US culture in 2013, but Homer Goes to Prep School didn't wade too far into the real-life worldview shared by influencers in that subculture. Instead, it positions Homer's descent into paranoia as a deeply personal phenomenon, following a lost child-induced lockdown at an indoor amusement park, during which a bunch of dads are trapped together and immediately spiral into Lord of the Flies-esque savagery. Homer is left deeply traumatized. Thus, egged on by a charming Tom Waits voiced survivalist, he becomes convinced that the Simpsons must prepare to face the worst of mankind. Naturally, Homer's worst fears are confirmed when an electromagnetic pulse wipes out all the power in Springfield, due to his own workplace negligence, of course.
Everyone but us is doomed. I am so jazzed.
Still, this episode is one of the sharpest and funniest Simpsons episodes of its time. A Hollywood satire about pirating movies, but also doubling as a pointed critique of the decline of the theatrical movie-going experience. It follows Homer and Bart as they open a backyard theater to escape the poor quality and utter lack of audience etiquette plaguing contemporary multiplexes, only for Homer to be imprisoned by the FBI on a tip from Marge herself.
Whoever did this to me will be haunted by unbearable guilt forever. Forever!
After the bus bringing Homer to prison crashes, he becomes a fugitive and escapes to the Swedish consulate with his family. At his trial, he gives a speech so moving that the Hollywood bigwigs agree to drop the charges in exchange for the movie rights to his story. Treehouse of Horror 25 saw Kang and Kodos back in their usual Halloween-adjacent appearance. But in a move no one expected, the brother-sister duo popped up in a regular episode to add a touch of sci-fi to the season. The Man Who Came to Be Dinner was the best performance for an episode in all of 2015. In the episode, which was at one point considered for expansion into a theatrical film, the Simpsons are kidnapped by Kang and Kodos and taken to their planet, Rigel 7, where they're displayed as zoo attractions and forced to vote on who among them will be eaten. The family unanimously picks Homer, but the Simpsons ends up being too toxic to be properly enjoyed as meals. The second episode after the mid-season hiatus for season 27, Teenage Mutant Milk Coursed Hurdles, takes a typically torturous road to title parody selection. It has nothing at all to do with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise. Instead, the title refers to the emotional pandemonium that befalls Bart and Lisa when they drink hormone-filled Buzz Cola milk and get prematurely catapulted into puberty. Lisa gets pimples, wears makeup for the first time, and ushers in newfound popularity at school as a result. Meanwhile, Bart grows a prototype of a mustache, develops feelings for his new substitute teacher, played by Sofia Vergara, and gets into a ridiculous romantic rivalry with Principal Skinner.
Face it, Simpson, you can't compete with me. I can rent a car.
Both storylines return to classic The Simpsons beats in a way that must have felt like home for any viewer who hadn't been keeping up with the show in years. America had Spider-Pig fever in 2007, but the Simpsons movie original character Plopper didn't have his own proper episode of the show until 10 years later. Pork and Burns features the pig's triumphant return with an added cameo from author Joyce Carol Oates for good measure. Like many other late-era Simpsons scripts, Pork and Burns cycles through multiple successive storylines. After Marge purchases a book about the importance of decluttering, the episode follows the Simpsons as they each get rid of things that no longer bring them joy. Homer is pressured by Marge to give up Plopper and find him a new home, while Lisa faces an existential crisis after realizing she's no longer passionate about playing the saxophone. Thanks to the plethora of plots, there's enough The Simpsons packed into the episode to make it a satisfying watch for any kind of casual viewer dropping in.
Marge, he brings me joy. And to keep him, I'll give up beer.
Deal.
Uh-oh.
The second episode of the season 29 back half, 2018's Frink Gets Testy, was an uncommon one. Usually, Professor Frink gets most of his screen time during the Treehouse of Horror episodes, but he was a main player in this one. Fittingly for the guy with the super high IQ, this episode is all about test scores. Maurice LaMarche drops by to supply the show with his first-rate Orson Welles impression, voicing the legendary filmmaker as the host of a documentary about Nostradamus that catches the attention of Mr. Burns. Worrying that the end might be nigh, Springfield's richest man decides to build an ark to keep the town's most valuable citizens safe. To determine who those citizens might be, he enlists the help of Professor Frink, who develops an alternative to traditional IQ test scores with his personal value quotient. While Burns sets about having his ark built, Everyone in Springfield takes Frink's test with shocking results. Lisa is horrified to learn she did exactly 1 point worse than Ralph Wiggum, while Bart manages the incredibly Simpson-esque feat of scoring 1 singular point out of a possible 500.
I don't need any test. I'm street smart.
Except a mix-up means that it was Homer who actually scored a 1.
I mean, what a clod! Worst handwriting and brain in town.
Hey!
Plenty of crises unfold from there, all the way up to an ending that skewers and subverts the very concept of ranking humans by their so-called personal value.